Greetings of the day, everyone. I'm privileged to welcome you all into the first children edition of Orange City Literature Festival, organized by SDR Knowledge Foundation in association with GH Raisoni University and powered by Raisoni Group of Institutions. The motive behind the fest is to explore the ways that should help students develop emotional intelligence, exposing children to quality literature that can contribute to the creation of responsible, successful, and caring individuals. Stories have power to promote emotional and moral development. The fest will enable them to develop into caring, intelligent, and friendly people. As I have said, stories. It's not only today's concept. I'm talking about Katha Sarita Sagara, oceans of streams of stories. It is a famous 11th century collection of Indian legend. I am sure many of us was not aware about it. This Katha Sarita Sagar is a collection of fairy tales and folk tales as retold in Sanskrit by Shaivat Somdeva. Today we are going to take some tales from this Katha Sarita Sagar, and the topic of today's session is also tales from Katha Sarita Sagar, and our speaker is Miss Anupama Jain, who is in conversation with Miss Sutapa Basu. Let me introduce our speaker and moderator for today. Anupama Jain is the author of When Padma Bani Phula, listed as one of the 5 best books in 2018 fiction. She is a co-author of 10 anthologies across genres, one of which is Limca record holder as India's first composite novel. Anupama has won multiple awards for her writing, be it the Orange Flower Award or for humor or Mom's Presso Award for fiction, and parental blogging. My God, if I start discussing about so many things about her, we won't get much time for this session. But then also I would like to mention, she was listed as one of the 10 Indian women bloggers, a feminist must follow by Women's Web. She blogs at Aka Eserbek. I'm sorry, Anupama, I guess I am not pronouncing it better. It's akaeserbek.wordpress.com, listed in the Best Indian Blogs Directory 2018 under Topical Matters and Current Affairs. Anupama writes an award-winning satirical series at readomania.com. Aj wants to know, talking on the quirky world around with its vagaries. Anupama is the founder and admin of Senior School Moms, which won the Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Facebook Groups. She is also the head content and collaborations at Incredible Women's of India. We welcome you, Anupama. It was awesome reading your details. It's just
Thank you so much.
fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. It is said that if you are inviting an expert, you have to finalize an expert to moderate that expert. And today we are having Sutapa Basu with us. Sutapa Basu is the author of Padmavati, The Queen Tells Her Own Story, which is published with Readomania in 2017. The legend of Genghis Khan and the Curse of Nadir Shah, she won the Author Award for Best Fiction 2019 by Times of India and JK Papers for her book, The Curse of Nadir Shah. She has authored a psychological thriller, Dangal, with Readomania in 2016. That was nominated for the Anupam Kher Award for Debut Novel in 2017. She is the 2016 first prize winner of the Times of India's Right India campaign. Whoa. Her short stories have appeared in anthologies Crossed and Knotted, Defiant Dreams, When They Spoke and Write India Stories. Her poems have appeared in Kafiana and Dawn Beyond West. I once again welcome you both. It's just awesome going through your profiles, and we are lucky that our Children Festival is having you both with us. So welcome you both in this children edition of Orange City Literature Festival. And I would like to hand over the session to Sutapa Basu, ma'am, to proceed with our session today. Tales from Katha Sarita Sagara.
Thank you, Mrinal. And this is a grand opportunity that we are able to, speak with children at the first Children's Fest of the Orange City Literature Festival. And a very, very warm welcome to you, Anupama. Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much, Sudapa. Thank you, Mrinal. Thank you for including me in this fabulous edition for children. I mean, that's how I earn my fancy butter of the day. So it is such a pleasure to be here.
And it's a great pleasure that we are here to discuss your latest book, Kings, Saviours, and Scoundrels, at this Orange City Literature Festival. Now, your book is a collection of stories that have been taken from the ancient book called Katha Sarita Sagara. Far, far back in the 11th century, this book is supposed to be a collection of nearly 22,000 verses. Can you imagine? 22,000. And they are all spread across 18 books. These books were written by Somdev, a Shaivite Brahmin of Kashmir. And he wrote it to amuse Suryavati, the wife of King Anant of Kashmir, in whose court Somdev was the poet. Now let's see what Anupama has found so interesting in this collection, this old collection, that she has rewritten them, and we are going to love reading them. Right, children? So let's start off with the first question to the author. How did this ancient Katha Sarita Sagara inspire you that you wanted to rewrite the stories?
Isn't this a beautiful book? Isn't this a very
Absolutely. It's a lovely cover.
with all sorts of, very, very attractive symbols on top. As you know, Siddhapasa, children, I earn my butter by teaching children. So I've been doing this for a while now. So as part of what I do, I have taught great, stories by the great Vikram Seth in poem, prose, and poetry. Whether it was the story of a louse and flea, that story finds a place here, or the story of monkey and the unlikely friendship between a monkey and a crocodile. So that also finds. So I love the way how he had used the art form of poetry to narrate a story which we've all heard. And it was extremely interesting because there's the story we know, but the way the narration captivated me as well as the children whom I taught. Now, the children asked me, ma'am, you write for adults. From my biodata, you've seen that, I write predominantly for adults. But whereas I've spent most of my time with the young children. So they asked me, right, well, you write for others, you write for adults, and you won awards. How about writing for us? So when that idea started getting implanted in my head, I started looking at stories in a different way. What else can I do to these stories? So when the opportunity came about, I jumped at it, and I'm very happy to say, and that took form this book. I hope I've done justice because children have rated this book and they've given very warm words and very high rating for this. The book has graced the school libraries and libraries across India, be it Hyderabad or Gurgaon. And you have read it, Sudhavasa, so you can tell me whether I've done justice to the tales.
Absolutely. Like you just said, that all the stories in it are myths and legends and fables, but they just like you can tell the same story in a poem and make it so interesting. You can rewrite the story in such a way that it can become interesting too. And I suppose that is the reason that children have loved this book and they've rated it really highly.
Thank you.
Now, tell me something, Anupama. There are some stories in it which are to do with humans. Like you did say that there are some stories to do with animals. There are also some stories to do with humans. Do you think these stories are true?
That's a very tricky question, I must say, Sudhamsa. But see, stories, as I always say, are seeds of inquiry planted into the fertile minds of young children, where you have plants of creativity or saplings of creativity that will sprout. So if you and you can, I feel, by the medium of stories, you can teach the kids so much. And the best way is even to leave the stories open ended and ask them to come up with what they think, and surprisingly, the versions that they come up with are learning for you as well. I mean, if I may here, I'll just digress a bit. We were doing Merchant of Venice. Now, Merchant of Venice, predominantly, we've been taught as Shylock is the bad person, but the children of today say Shylock is not the one. It is Antonio at fault because he is the one who has called him racial names. He's the one who's disrespected him. He is misbehaved with him. So why shouldn't Shylock ask for his pound of flesh? That's a new way of looking at stuff. So again, these stories I feel might have happened. A percentage of thing might have been a reality, but as myths or as legends or as folk tales happen, as with each rendition, a quote of one some takeaway gets added. That's the embellishment makes it that much more interesting, you know. So that's what I've tried to see do in the stories here. If you look at the original story in the original Katha Sarita Sagara, might be a couple of verses.
Must be, yeah.
Yeah, so and like for instance, there is the story of friendship between most unlikely people. It's a prince and there is his minister. So they undergo a lot of travails and lot of problems in their lives. But the way they stand by each other through each difficult time, that's the crux of the story. But what I add is my own takeaway, keeping in with today's ethos. So that's why I feel the reality might have been lost, but the crux remains, eternal. That's what happens through the renditions across generations, I feel.
So when you asked your children that, give me another ending probably to the story, and they came out with these unusual, I suppose, ending from their, whatever they thought should have been the ending from their viewpoint, did any of them, say that I think these gods and goddesses also lived, not only the humans? Did any of them say that?
Not only they, but whole of India supposes and believes that most of them have lived. That's the crux of the problems that we have around most of the time. I think what is a who is a god compared to a human? Somebody who exhibits better qualities, better qualities than most of us. The qualities that we should aspire to possess.
True.
That's what separates us normals from gods. No? So, so if gods, I think they were better human beings who had better qualities, who had aspirational qualities. That's why we still call him Maryada Purushottam Ram. See, so I think the gods with their behavior became a cut above us, and as different yugas came, we are in Kali Yuga, Treta, Dwapara. So the moralities have gone down. So their level of moral behavior has gone up, and our moral levels have gone down. That's why they have become gods and we have become humans. I think
So basically, you're saying that, probably people, I mean, they are humans, but who are more aspirational, who are better human beings, and to whom we can look up to and who
yes,
can lead us.
yes,
Those are the people whom we would say
call
are gods
we
and
could call
goddesses.
them gay. Like for instance, even now we say Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, at
Yes,
that time he was just a person who was trying to unite the nation.
absolutely.
I mean, the teachings of Krishna are still read. I mean, Gita has become part of the management courses. Uh,
Yes, yes.
Krishna also finds a spot in the story. So that's why I keep mentioning Ram and Krishna, because they are humans. They had better qualities. Those qualities have are aspirational for us. Maybe we will learn from them.
And tell me one more thing, Anupama. Is there really any difference between the times, the people, the way people lived in the past and the way people are living now?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. This is something, there is a lesson also for grade 12, especially on this topic called the third level. So the person, the protagonist of this lesson, unable to bear with the turmoils of or the frictions or the stresses of the modern time, invents a parallel universe, which is basically stuck in the grandfather's time. It's a much easier time. Uh, uh, the day there was no pressure of running against time, coping with others. And so these stories are also, they're very most of the stories are very happy. They're very peaceful, and there's no strife in them. There's no unhappiness in them. But can you live without technology? Technology is the one that those times are better, definitely. In a sense, they were easier, but I cannot imagine living in those times because without technology, one cannot survive. So, cannot imagine a life without technology. But of course, these stories, when they paint a world of war where there were kings and there were ladies who were saviors, or they were scoundrels in the sense people who were less than human. So it is a world, different world definitely, but I would definitely like this world better with those ethos taken. Maybe I'm trying to be selfish. If I can get the best of both worlds, well, that is nothing like it.
So basically, what you are telling us is that the environment has changed. So you have technology today, and you didn't have it then. Also, there is a lot of pressure of other objectives
Constant
which was not
pressure.
there. Yeah,
Constant.
but right, but the human being, or the way a human being thinks, or what is right and what is wrong, that has not changed, right?
The
That remains the same.
the values remain. I think whether however many years and centuries might pass, the values still remain the same. The values
Exactly.
that drive us remain the same. Why do we still talk about Ram today? There's a story here called Squirrels and Stripes. Uh,
Yes, yes.
how did the squirrel get its stripes? So the story talks about the love that the squirrel had for Ram when the entire Vanasena was building a bridge against from here to Lanka so that Ram could go and slay Ravana and get his wife back. Whether it was a big creature or a small creature, the love that makes, that drives around remains eternal, right? So, and there are stories about treachery because there might be sometimes when people will not react the way that we would expect them to. But the stories teach us that there are times you need to be on your guard. There are excellent stories about friendship between unlikely of creatures, because in the end, it's we all need friends in our lives to make us, to go ahead in life, to swim against the tide. So values are eternal. The way we look at the values, the way we interpret our lives, whether the way we may lead, the social modes may change, but the core values of love, friendship, all these remain the same.
I agree. I totally agree with that. Now, let me come back to the book itself. So, Katha Sarita Sagar has these countless stories, over 18 volumes. How did you choose the stories that you wanted to rewrite from so many in the original collection?
Tapasya, if you see the time it was written, it was a time when it was a totally a different time. Um, and the ladies had a different way of being judged in the society. So I trawled the series to find stories where the ladies were the heroes of their own stories, where the ladies had a say in the way their lives panned out. And I also like, for instance, in this book, there is the story of Kriti Sena. Each time I read it, I am surprised by the courage she exhibits in each of the circumstances that she has. And there is also a story of Mandaravati, where she decides whom to marry. I mean, that was not so this thing about those times. So, or the story of Nala and Damayanti, when Damayanti exhibits amount of grit and courage given the circumstances she leads. And I also wanted to read the stories which will make me happy. You know, there are days in yellow, and I wanted to have a lot of humorous stories. So there were stories about these mandabuddhis who do all sorts of weird things, or there are stories about a wisecrack and how he spins yarns. And there are also little stories with little moral twist, because eventually the story is just a medium of you're trying to convey something. It's a little moralistic twist at the end. So I searched for stories which appeal to me, which I thought, because since I've been working with children, I can understand what their language is, what is their grammar, and grabbing their attention span is the most difficult one, because they're competing with so many visual mediums for their attention. So I figured out, started looking like them, thinking like them. So whatever stories appealed to me in those, I had shortlisted and I treated. That's
So
how
any child who's reading these stories can hope to be inspired, can hope to find some of the stories funny, and they can enjoy the humor in it. And of course, most of the stories would appeal to them as children. Those were basically your criteria when you were choosing which ones to write.
exactly.
So did you find it easy, or was it difficult to rewrite the stories? Because they must be written in a different style. Because in fact, originally they were poems, the verses, and then they were made into stories. But the language, the style must have been very different. So how did you manage that?
Because, in fact, I feel children's literature, for all the supposedly easy, but I think writing for a child is the most difficult task, especially when you have written a lot of adult literature or stories for the adults, because there is this you have to operate within that short bandwidth of vocabulary, expressions, yet you have to make it very impactful. So you cannot digress, you cannot, you have to captivate the attention of the children. So trying to, snip away at the unnecessary details while retaining the core of the story, and trying to write in today's sensibilities, because sensibilities are changing every 3 years, and these are eternal tales. So how will these tales survive for a few more years? So it is a very difficult task, taking the stories of yesteryears, snipping away at all the unnecessary details, using only that much vocabulary, and making sure they will last few more years of sensibilities. So each story took a long time. I mean, writing was easy, and editing it, re-editing it, embellishing it was a difficult task. But I think I have survived and I have done a good job, because this book, I had an event a couple of days back. It was for children. Children had come. It was a children workshop, and one child had picked the book, and she started reading in the night. It was on a Sunday, so Sunday night. Her mother kept coaxing her to go to sleep. She said, "One more story, one more story." And her mother sent me the video. Look, my child is not going to sleep. She's not leaving your book, and she keeps saying, "I want to read more." So those are the times when you feel, yes, I've done my job well.
You must have felt very good, to see that and get that call.
She has used this book, to read a story in her. They have a literary week in their school library. So she had chosen my book to read. So these are moments of happiness, and you feel, yes, the whole effort was well done.
I'm sure. Now, you have not only written the stories, rewritten the stories, but you've also drawn the illustrations for them. So
Yes.
how did you choose which part of the story to illustrate?
That was. Thank you for this question. So, Tapasa, this is a very important question. So, when I was asked if I could illustrate it also. So, if you when you retell a classic, it becomes about 50% of yours. When you do the illustrations of it, it becomes that much more on. Now I can say this book is about 80% of mine, because I've also seen at what point will they react in what way. So at some points I said, yes, this is a place where I can embed a picture and show how they would react. So then I try to imagine what their facial expressions would be. So that made it even more mine. Like there is this story here. So this is the illustration of sun.
Lovely, lovely. So
But
since you're showing us illustrations, can you read something from it as well? Can I request you to please
at
read?
this point, sun usually is supposed to be very happy, but he's in a quandary. He's in a fix. He's not in a happy situation. So his eyes have to be very, I don't know what I'm doing here, sort of thing. And I try to show the mountain and this. The last scene is the most this thing where the mouse and the rat get married. So there is the father who's performing the ceremony.
You manage.
So this is what I try to. So I'll try and read a little bit of this. This is again for this story. The basic story is that there is a rishi who is doing his morning prayers after his bath in the river. Then, as he puts his hands to offer water to sun god, a little rat falls from the kite's claws. Then he converts it into a girl. He transforms it into a girl, brings her up, and he tries to get her married. And he wants the most powerful beings in the universe to be his son-in-law. And what transpires is the story. So here, this story is my favorite also, because each interaction I have tried to use some sort of idioms and phrases, so that there is also a little linguistic takeaway apart from the fun of the story. Uh, Deep in the jungles of India, eons ago, a hermit had made his home near a sparkling brook. He usually meditated under a huge banyan tree after his daily ablutions. One early morning, as he stood waist deep in the tranquil brook, offering water to the rising sun while chanting the holy mantras with his eyes closed, something fell in his open palms. It was a mouse, which had escaped a certain death from the claws of kite. One look at the quivering mouse, a raw emotion tapped the ascetic's heart. With the powers accumulated through years of deep meditation, he transformed it into a young girl. The child, under the loving care of the ascetic, soon grew into a beautiful maiden. Realizing that the young woman was now of marriageable age, the ascetic searched around for a suitable alliance for his dear girl. He wanted only the very best suitor for his daughter. Wanting to give away his adopted child to a powerful entity in marriage, he invoked the sun god. Sun god, my daughter should have the most dynamic and potent being as a spouse. You give light to this world. There is none greater than you. Will you marry my daughter? As the young girl squinted, unable to take the brightness of the sun god, the sun replied, "Oh, Esther, in all humility, I must decline your proposal. I'm not the most powerful as you think. The big black cloud is more powerful than I am. He obscures me in a flash, emasculating my strength." The ascetic nodded understanding. While the young girl was happy to have escaped the heat, he summoned the cloud after the sun took his leave. Receiving the cloud with all courtesies, the ascetic made the same proposal as earlier. The cloud rumbled and thundered. I tell you honestly, for all my bluster, the wind god can simply blow me away to any quarter of the world. Needless to say, the wind is more powerful than me. It's a better suitor than I am. The ascetic nodded in agreement, while the young woman was glad to see the end of a cold spell. The wind god was requested for his presence, and once he arrived, the ascetic offered his daughter's hand in marriage because the wind was unbeatable. The wind roared. True, I can wreak havoc with my brute force, but my nemesis is the mighty mountains. I cannot move them an inch, so I'm not the most dominant. With this, the flighty god took the ascetic's leave. The maiden was pleased that the interaction was a breeze and short-lived, while the ascetic frowned. So they have written at this thing for clouds and trees, The ascetic still did not lose hope. He then invited the mighty Himalayas for a get-together and shared his ardent wish to see his daughter marry the most impressive being on earth. The mountain was silent for a second. He then said very gravely, True, I offered protection to Bharat from invaders, and I'm always standing tall. But these seemingly little mice are far stronger than I am, for they dig deep holes in me. I cannot do a thing about their audacity or tenacity or temerity. As the mountain moved away, creating quakes around, the ascetic smiled softly while the girl bowed her head shyly. He called the forest mouse to his house and told it to marry his daughter. The mouse nibbled at the fruits offered by the ascetic and mumbled, Even if I marry her, how will she get into my home, which is actually a big hole near the banyan tree? The ascetic burst out laughing and transformed the very willing and gleeful maiden back to a mouse, its original form. The bride found her groom a perfect match. The marriage of the mice was performed with great happiness. So,
Lovely.
I think we always find our own tribe, no matter how different we are. We always
Absolutely.
gravitate towards our tribe, our beings.
Yes. Own community and own,
Yes.
own people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And those are, because those are our roots, and we must know them before we start thinking about how we can change ourselves or whatever. Yes, I totally agree about that. Runal, can we? Is this time for more questions, or should I?
We can proceed with one or two questions. One question that I have here is like, as Anupama ma'am said, uh, that stories are important and we have to give it to the generations, and our children also, they should get into it. So how can she suggest that, what is the perfect suggestions for the children to go for the go reading for this book? Because now the era is of Kindles and books and everybody, so it's like people go, or today kids also go for the podcast and all other areas. So
Right.
what Anupama ma'am can suggest for reading this book, as this is from the ancient scripts, like those stories which we read, like Pancha Tattva ki kahaniyan and all those things. So now kids need to understand all those things. So what she can suggest for them to go for this book?
Thank you for that question, Nan. The onus is on us parents rather than we say that the children don't read, the children are losing touch with their roots. I think firstly we should start taking pride in our culture. We have a very rich culture and tradition. Every part of India has its own native flavor. Every area comes up with its own wonderful stories. If we do not, I still remember my childhood was spent in the company of books, because I'm a Telugu. I'm very proficient in reading and writing Telugu, because of my grandmother. She would collect the serialized the things of Mahabharata and Ramayana, and she would keep them ready for each vacation I went to her. So my favorite pastime in summer would be, she would create a lot of eatables for me. I would plate up, take the book, sit on my terrace and read for hours. It was such a beautiful thing. That's why I feel I'm connected to my roots. I'm connected to my stories. The other day, I went to a workshop. I had just tossed a question. Do you all know why does this squirrel have its stripes? I mean, of course, there is a scientific reason behind it. But the stories that we have grown up, except one mother, none of the parents even knew. So it is a little sad in our effort, in our endeavor to be one with like the world, the rest of the world that moves. We are trying to be a local village, but we shouldn't give up on our roots, our culture, our stories, because these are what have made what we are. Now take pride, narrate those stories, keep telling your children about these wonderful tales. And unless you read it to them, I mean, they will see what happens in the house, whatever happens around it, permeates it. So read a story while your child sleeps. A simple story, a two-page story. Leave it open-ended. Ask them to give out their own question. Ask to give their own question. And the suggestions they come up with will often prompt you because they have such a fresh perspective than us who are jaded with, our own experiences. Their vision might be very, very fresh for us also. So I think the onus lies on us more than anything.
True, true. Over to you, Sitaba.
So I think what you've said is like the absolute truth that not only do they have a fresh view, but what happens is when they start understanding what their own roots are, then they would also be able to progress as a community, become, make their lives better, think out of the box, because they will get a lot of ideas as to how things had actually happened, in India in the past. When India was called was called the Golden Land. So why was it called the Golden Land? They need to know their heritage, and once they get to know that, not only do they feel proud, but maybe some of the answers that they may be looking for today, they might find it in the stories of the past, the legends of the past.
So like in this,
Right?
there are two stories. One, there's a story of a person who wants what best can life offer. So he suggested to go to two people. One person has all the riches in the world, all the riches, literally, but he has poor digestion. So he subsists on barley water, and any little party he ends up throwing. And the other person has enough to get by, but he has robust health. So, and he can revel in happiness. He does merriment with his friends, and each time I feel eventually in life, moderation of everything is what is needed rather than heavy, lots of riches, but when you don't have the mechanism to enjoy those. That's a takeaway for today also. We are forever running behind the wealth. But when we don't take care of our health, all the wealth in the world will not help you. And there is this another story of person with two friends. One has a very showy way of welcoming him each time he comes into his house. The other one barely bothers. But when the first one, when a crisis comes, the first one is the one who runs away. The second one literally gives his life. So identifying your friends is the paramount part of life.
I think that was a wonderful, finish to this entire discussion, and how children can find a lot of solutions to problems they're facing every day, in their everyday life, from stories which are there in this book. So I would suggest to all the children out there, please pick up this book and read it. And you will also find that Kings, Saviours, and Scoundrels is a part of your life, right? So thank you so much, Anupama, and thank you, Orange Literature Festival, Orange City Literature Festival, for this children's chapter, and thank you all the children out there for being with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mrinal. Thank you, Anupama.
Thank you so much, Anupama ma'am. Thank you so much, Sutapa ma'am. It was actually a pleasure being a part of this session. It will be a great pleasure to read this book our audience can please get their copy of the book from the links provided in our description or visit a crossword store in your city. This session was supported by Readomania publication. You can get your copy from Readomania website as well. A must-read book for generations today and generations of these children, like parents of the children's too. Wish you happy reading, friends. I once again thank you both, ma'am, and the audience from out there who are joining us from the systems. Get ready for the quiz based on this session and visit www.oclfnagpur.com to participate in a quiz and win exciting gifts and prizes. A gigantic literature festival, Orange City Literature Festival, will be back in November 2022 in Nagpur, the city of oranges. Get ready for the physical fest in the coming winter, attending awesome sessions and interacting with your favorite authors. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrinal. Thank you, Sudhapa ma'am.
Thank you, Mrinal. Thank you, Anupama.
Thank you,
And have a very good day.